For the first time in almost 2 decades, the Democratic Republic of Congo has seen a transfer of power. But the results have been marred by the deaths of protesters and accusations of fraud, even though an opposition member won.
First of all, I wish to thank God, the master of time and circumstances, who allowed for such an event which a few weeks ago was still unimaginable. That's why I follow it directly, and I know many of you find it hard to accept. But I say with sincerity, I pay homage to President Joseph Kabila, President of the Republic.
Well, Felix Tshisekedi has been declared the next president. The ruling party has even accepted the outcome. But rival opposition leader Martin Fayulu, who had been well ahead in opinion polls, has called the results a sham. Critics have accused Tshisekedi and longtime President Joseph Kabila of making a power-sharing deal behind closed doors. Well, to discuss this, let's go to our panel. In London, we have Vava Tampa, the founder of the civil society organization Save the Congo. And in Canterbury, we have Alex Ntung. He's an independent DRC analyst. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Vava, let me start with you. Felix Tshisekedi, as the next leader of the Democratic Republic of Congo, do you recognize that? Was that a legitimate win?
I tell you what, I find myself in such an incredibly huge dilemma. I've always defined myself politically or philosophically at least as a Tshisekedist, which is essentially believing in the idea of état de droit, or the state of law, the rule of law. So I believed in what his father stood for. But in this situation, we find ourselves in a situation in which the Catholic Church, which sent the largest observer mission on this election, have actually said, this is not the right result. That Kabila and Tshisekedi have made a deal to declare Tshisekedi a winner. And the question for people like me is, what would happen to ordinary people? What does Kabila get from this deal? And what would Tshisekedi essentially do in the days to come? So I find myself in a situation in which I'm going to wait until the final result are finally released for me to make up my mind. But I'm not yet ready to sort of jump and scream with joy as some other people are doing. Alex Ntung, can you relate to that dilemma that Vava's currently in?
I do certainly relate to Vava's dilemma. There is something we need to understand of what happened yesterday. Kabila has played many cards. Beginning, he was hoping that he will continue to postpone elections. Secondly, he was hoping that the opposition will continue to be divided. And thirdly, he was hoping that the opposition will boycott the elections due to the electronic machines. And all the three options did not work. Fourthly, he was hoping that by excluding 3 towns, Yumbi, Butembo, and Beni, again, the opposition will boycott the elections. That did not happen. Again, something incredibly well played by the opposition. And fourthly, he was hoping, lastly, he was hoping that the fact that he's in control of all institutions, of course, also part of FCC being the largest political network that Congo has ever experienced. Again, he was hoping that Shadari will be able to win and they will be able to influence elections. The defeat was deep, and there was no way that all those options would be used. And lastly, of course, as Vava has just mentioned, Senko has been incredibly behind what has been going on. But what is happening now, it isn't a win of Tshisekedi, but instead it is Tshisekedi being handed over the power, by FCC. So there have been suddenly some sort of agreement that has gone on rather than actually
certainly, but we can't be certain, Alex, we can't be certain that there was a deal, right? This is everybody guessing at this moment in time, right?
What's the sources on the ground? We saw some changes from Tshisekedi tweeting and homage to Kabila. He's saying that unity and reconciliation. That was a completely different tone from UDP's leader. Somehow, that's led to some conclusion that there is a possibility that Kabila is going to be holding some of the biggest ministries, for example, defense and the police, and possibly justice and primacy or prime minister.
Yeah, one of the comments made by Tshisekedi that Alex is referring to was, I pay tribute to President Joseph Kabila, and today we should no longer see him as an adversary, but rather a partner in democratic change in our country. We spoke about the Catholic Church, Vava. Now, they said the results didn't match with their data. And based on all the available evidence, their data said that Mr. Fayulu won, Martin Fayulu. Let's have a little listen to what he had to say very recently.
We categorically reject the result published by Mr. Nanga. May God Almighty bless the Congo.
So, Vava, Fayulu categorically rejects it. What does that mean? Is there going to be trouble on the streets?
Well, there is potential for trouble, and this time the potential for trouble is bigger and greater, and perhaps even more bloody than we've ever experienced. Look, what Kabila must also give him some credit, because his people are fascinatingly clever. This was an incredibly clever move. They understood if they had declared Shadari as winner. Shadari is Kabila's cousin. He's a former interior minister, and he was also the head of Kabila's political party. If they had declared him the winner, the entire country would have risen up in arms to overthrow Kabila through the street, and they would have lost everything else. Now, they knew clearly they could not have declared Martin Fayulu the winner, who is, according to the Catholic Church, the legitimate winner, because Fayulu essentially, I mean, look, what we are fighting for here, you need to bear in mind, is good governance. And that good governance only comes when politicians are accountable, when the people are actually le souverain premier. A French way to sort of say the people actually decide who wins. So they couldn't declare Fayulu the winner, so they had to strike a deal. And the deal is how to essentially allow the system, the very system that had killed hundreds of thousands of millions of Congolese people, and today the 10th is actually exactly 7 months today. I lost a friend of mine, Luc Kulula, who was fighting for this old, change and democracy in Congo. So how do you create some sort of facade situations in which the system continues, but under a different guise? But that's one thing, but we need to bear in mind, this is not the end. This is simply the beginning of this crisis, because there is a chance in the next couple of days, this will be challenged in the Constitutional Court, and if those Supreme Court judges have any sense whatsoever, they would certainly essentially nullify the result, order a new election, which means Kabila stays as president, but crucially, it means Kabila stays as president with some sort of legitimacy, because he would say to the world, but look, we organized election. It wasn't perfect, of course, but look, Tshisekedi, an opposition figure, was declared the winner, and the Constitutional Court came in and sort of said that wasn't good enough, so I'm staying to organize another election. And again, the humanitarian crisis, the killings of our people continues. So it's an incredibly tricky situation for the Congolese people and for the whole region as a whole.
Alex and Ntung, do you agree that this could just be the very beginning of a crisis?
Not fully. I don't fully agree with that. I think today something which we were expecting is, violence across the country. Yes, there have been some report, for example, in the Back Congo, in the Kwilu area, and there have been some victims as soon as the report came out. But what is likely to happen instead, what Vava just mentioned, is that there is a last card that Kabila is going to be playing. The last card is that the election's result will be challenged, most likely to be challenged, and by Martin Fayulu, and he has 10 days to do that. If a constitutional court allows Martin Fayulu that actually there have been irregularities, they are likely to actually accept in favor of Kabila. They're actually to accept that. In that case, obviously, they may lead to some sort of dialogue. Dialogue will lead to transition, and transition may be led by Kabila. And we may have to see again Kabila for another year or 8 months. But something which we need to mention to conclude that is that Fayulu have been excluded for 3 factors. One, the fact that he has a link with 2 big supporters, Moise Katumbi and Jean-Pierre Bemba, and secondly, the fact that he has links with the external powers, and that has played a big factor. And of course, 3, the Catholic Church has been incredibly vocal and behind, showing that they support Martin Fayulu. Those 3 factors have been one of the biggest fears Kabila's camp had to deal with. Accepting Shadari to lose, that's one thing, but accepting Fayulu to win, that is something they could not accept.
Vava, come in.
Alex is, as often he does, sort of advocating for Kabila. He seems to be a fan of that regime for reasons I've never understood. He has essentially repeated what I said, but crucially, look, the reason I mentioned that this is a very tricky situation, because now, and I've spoken to many people at home and many people across the world, now what you see within the Congolese community is the frustration that were initially directed toward Kabila and his people is no longer being directed against Kabila and his people. It's not being directed against Tshisekedi and his people for the simplest reason. Tshisekedi is seen, and it seems quite clear to everyone that he has betrayed our fight for change. He has become an ally of Kabila. And you need to ask yourself basic questions. I mean, why would you have to promise Kabila for Kabila to accept you to replace him? For Kabila to accept Tshisekedi to become the next president, and you need to bear in mind Tshisekedi's father is still, he died 2 years ago. His body is still in Brussels in exile because Kabila doesn't want it to return home to be buried at home. Now, for Kabila to refuse his own cousin to replace him and to give that seat to Tshisekedi, my God, I'm asking myself, what must have been promised to Kabila? Okay. But let's put that aside. My fear, what really concerns me, what really worries me, is the frustration which is being directed against Tshisekedi and his people. And if that is not managed, what we would see over the next coming days or coming weeks or months even, is essentially an internal fight between the people from Tshisekedi's tribe fighting against other people at home, and the only winner in that situation will be Kabila. I think eventually we need to come together, unite, and sort of say, Kabila must go. There is no question that Kabila could stay. Kabila has to go, but not just Kabila, it's the entire system. And if Felix attempts to somehow save that system, he would fall down with that system. And that is not a threat. That is essentially a promise. That those are factual. Right. We would not allow it to continue. We would not allow it to go ahead.
Okay, so Alex, is that where you fundamentally disagree with Vava, that he is against Kabila in any sort of role, whether as an ally to Tshisekedi or someone who still has to keep hold of the controls for the next year or 18 months if the election results are annulled? He's against it in all forms. He says after 18 years, time's up, you need to go. Are you less keen on that? Are you comfortable with Kabila still staying in power in some form?
No, totally no. We know that, looking at the evaluation of what Kabila has done, the country is still facing 136 armed groups operating in Eastern Congo. Kabila will talk about unifying the country because of that. The time he took over, it was divided into 2 with RCD Goma and RCD Kisangani. That's what he said, that led to Sun City agreement. But before, during 1996 to now, many armed groups have been, being created every day. The country economy is still really, really devastating. So, people want to change.
Alex, let me ask you this question. Ask you this question. Clearly, do you think Tshisekedi won the election?
I've said from my first responses, I said that it doesn't look like it has been a winning election. It has been rather handing over power to Tshisekedi
Alex,
as an alternative.
If you feel that's the case, then ask yourself a question. Why has Kabila made a deal with Tshisekedi? What has Tshisekedi promised Kabila? Or what Kabila gains from this deal? Can you answer that question?
I can answer that question.
Okay, sure. And we'll make that the final word. Go ahead, Alex.
We need to go back to the 8th of August, the day that Kabila chose Shadari as his dauphin, as we say. We know that all analysts, we know that was to protect his legacy, to protect his future, to make sure that he has someone that he will be able to control, he has someone he will be able to manage. And that has not happened, and based on many other scenarios and strategies that he's been using. And the last scenario was last night, being able to negotiate with Tshisekedi and to come up with the least contentious leader that he would be able to face.
Right. Gentlemen,
he would have wanted to win.
Gentlemen, listen, Vava and Alex.
Can I just come back quickly?
Right, okay, very briefly, please, because we're completely out of time. I have to ask for extra time. So
for us, we've always said the best way forward has always been a civilian transition without any politician, led by Denis Mukwege, because he's an independent, neutral leader, civic leader, so that we can organize good elections. And this is a perfect example. And God save my people, because I'm really frightened for the future. I've never felt so frightened about what's going to happen to my people.
Gentlemen, please come back on this show. We love having you. We're going to be talking about DRC very soon. Again, Vava Tampa and Alex Ntung for the moment. Let me thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.